Hello, students. This lesson is on the problem of evil in our subject entitled Philosophy of Religion. Our references are uh, the book entitled Confessions by Augustine of Hippo, Summa Theologiae from Thomas Aquinas, Dr. Hiro Badlani, uh, entitled Hinduism Path of the Ancient Wisdom, Sebastian Gab, Why Do We Suffer? Buddhism and the Problem of Evil, and the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, Jesus Christ, the Bearer of the Water of Life, a Christian reflection on the New Age. Our first idea is that all human beings have a clear experience of evil. At one point of your life, you're going to meet it, and everybody has an idea of what that is. So when you talk about evil, uh, everybody knows about it. It also appears in morals. Okay, so when you see what is good and bad, you see what is evil. Now, first let's look at Hinduism. What is evil in Hinduism? Hinduism does not focus on the problem of evil in the same way as the monotheistic religions like Judaism or Christianity or Islam. In other words, good and evil does not directly coincide with the good and bad relations with the deity in Hinduism. Not necessarily. It's not all about that. It's not centered on that. Good and evil refer to the personal situation of each one within the samsara. Okay, so it's like your harmony with everything else in the world. For after all, Brahman is everything, the everything principle. And it depends on whether you are in harmony with that or not, that you find yourself in a positive vibe or a negative vibe. Okay. Hinduism focuses on the path to spiritual liberation called moksha. Moksha grants bliss, happiness in the present life such that evil and suffering have no effect on the liberated person's state of inner peace and happiness. So most of the gurus in Hinduism, well, they walk about like very peaceful, etc. That is the sign of having reached that moksha. Moksha also means an end to the cycle of rebirth. So eventually, if you're able to reach that state, you're not going to come back here into a body because, in principle, to be a soul trapped in a body is not a good thing. And that happens when your karma is bad. It's not good enough for you to be released from that body. In the end, our actions have an inner goodness and an inner evil that is related to the karma that comes to us. The Hindu conception of evil does not necessarily conflict with the Christian concept of evil. So we can't say, well, it's so different from the Christian concept of evil. I mean, there are similarities, but it does not fully coincide. The two can be harmonized because Hinduism does not go to the extent of negating the definition given by Christianity. What about Buddhism? Okay, so Buddhism, well, Buddha came from Hinduism, and you will find some similarities. But good and evil in Buddhism is derived from, would have will be influenced by the main thing that Buddha discovered about suffering, because that's what he wanted to resolve, right? When he went into a meditative state. Buddhism also admits samsara and karma. Therefore, whatever aspects of good and evil relate to these two teachings apply also to both Hinduism and Buddhism. The primal duality in Buddhism is between suffering and enlightenment. Okay, so the good versus the evil splitting has no direct analog in it. But of course, you can always think suffering is bad, enlightenment is good. Okay. The Buddhist understanding is that good and evil are innate, inseparable aspects of life. So it's just like the yin and the yang, right? They have to exist together. They are contrasting realities in this world, and you just have to ride on in this contrasting reality, hoping that you would enter into the good part of this reality. This view makes it impossible to label a particular individual or group as good or evil. Every single human being is capable of acts of the most noble good and the basest evil. In Buddhism, good and evil are personal mental states, not external realities. So it's not the action, but the harmony of the mental state that you're in. In the Kama Nidana Sutta, is given a soft definition that is in terms of the unwholesome mental states of greed, hate, and delusion. Okay, so unwholesome mental states. And this happens when the person is greedy, when the person hates someone, when the person is deluded by, let's say, power or whatever. They are often called the roots of the unwholesome, akusala. Sounds like in Indonesian, I am mistaken, kusala, in which sense they are radical evil, but the sense of which is in direct opposition to its namesake in theistic and demon-centered systems. Okay, so it's not really the same. What about New Age? We're jumping Judaism, Catholicism, Christianity, and Islam. I mean, Protestantism and Islam, because they are more or less similar, for they are Abrahamic religions. Okay, so what about New Age, which is not an Abrahamic religion? In New Age, there is no distinction between good and evil. Human actions are the fruit of either illumination or ignorance. Okay, so you are either um, yeah, enlightened in your state, or you're acting out of ignorance. We cannot condemn anyone, and nobody needs forgiveness. Believing in the existence of evil can create only negativity and fear. Okay, so in the New Age, well, we're using all the elements that are found in Hinduism and Buddhism. They say, okay, you have to be positive and you have to remove all the negativity from yourself. And that includes removing all the toxins from your body, which give out a negative energy. Yeah, so it's all about that. I mean, it's all about energy, negative energy, positive energy, a mixture of mystic things and science. The answer to negativity is love. Okay, that's the positive energy. But it is not the sort which has to be translated into deeds. It is more a question of attitudes of mind. Okay, so there's where you find its similarity with Buddhism. Attitudes of mind. Love is energy, a high frequency vibration, and the secret to happiness. And health and success is being able to tune in to find one's place in the great chain of being, of all that energy that is in the universe. Authority has shifted from a theistic location to within the self. Okay, so from God, authority from God, now authorities in ourselves. For New Age, alienation from the whole cosmos is the worst thing that can happen to you, and not personal failure or sin. So if you do not harmonize with the universe, that's the worst thing that could happen to you. You ought to harmonize with the universe. It's not a matter of sin or good works, but it's a matter of harmony with the universe. The remedy to this failure is to become more and more immersed in the whole of being, in the infinity of everything. In some New Age writings and practices, it is clear that one life is not enough to do this, to achieve this, right? To achieve this harmony. So there have to be reincarnations to allow people to realize their full potential. In New Age contexts, the law of karma is often seen as the moral equivalent of cosmic evolution. Okay, again, so there's good karma, bad karma. That is more or less what is moral in the New Age, and it's the same thing actually when in Buddhism and Hinduism. Karma is all about karma. It is no longer about evil or suffering, but is the universal law of cause and effect, part of the tendency of the interconnected universe towards moral balance. Okay, I don't know if you remember, if you have seen that movie Avatar. At one moment, the female character says, "Well, the Great Mother, okay, that is the mother, the goddess of the planet that they were in, Awa was the name of that goddess, does not take sides, she says. She just keeps the balance of things. Okay, so that statement and that movie also is very new age, right? So it expresses new age in such a clear way. It's the balance between good and evil. Okay, Manichaeism. So we insert Manichaeism because somehow the Christian, the monotheist um, teaching or idea, theory of evil was spurred on by this Manichaeism. For our main person there is Augustine of Hippo, Saint Augustine of Hippo. Saint Augustine of Hippo was a Manichaeist before. And what do the Manichaeists do? Their theory is they wanted to solve the problem of evil. Okay, so why is there evil in the world? And the solution that they found was this. God is good and everything that comes from his hands is good, right? Okay, everybody knows that everything that comes from God is good. So where did evil come from? Okay, so if it could never ever come from the good God, then there must come from something else. And the conclusion was it comes from a bad God. Okay, so there's a good God and a bad God. Everything that's good comes from this good God, and everything that's bad is from the bad God. Um, this is further proven by the fact, says the Manichaeist, because they use the Bible in order to make this analysis as well, that in the Old Testament, you look at God there, and God seems to be always punishing somebody, always meting out death and pestilence, etc. So, that God there in the Old Testament was the bad God, okay, says the Manichaeists. And then if you go to the New Testament, everything is about love and salvation, etc. Everything that Jesus says, well, that is about love and salvation. Now, that one is the good God speaking. So before the coming of Jesus, all the things were being said by the bad God, says the Manichaeists, okay? Again, this is a sect, okay, a little group there that became popular. And then when Jesus came, suddenly the good God started to take over. So what is the initial reasoning? Observation, there's evil in the world. Okay, so if we look at their what is called syllogism, the reasoning, it goes this way. There is evil in the world. Premise 2, evil cannot come from a good God. But evil must come from something since it is created, right? It cannot explain itself. Therefore, there must be an evil God who has created evil. Okay. For hence I believe evil also to be some kind of substance, says Saint Augustine, okay, Augustine of Hippo. It's a substance that comes from a bad substance. That's what we all thought it was, right? A bad substance coming from a bad creator, right? A bad source. And to have its own foul and hideous bulk, some malignant mind creeping through that earth. And because a piety constrained me to believe that the good God, yeah, could never create any evil nature, I conceived of two masses, okay, two things. One that was good, that mass that was good, and the other mass that was evil, contrary to one another, both unbounded, both infinite, but the evil narrower and the good more expansive. Okay? So you have now two principles, the good principle and the bad principle. Now, look at it. If you say, let's say that that's true. This is what is called reductio ad absurdum. You start saying, let's say that's true. What are the consequences of that being true? And then suddenly you will come out with a conclusion that's absurd, right? So if you come out with a conclusion that's absurd, then your premise, the first idea that you had, must be wrong. Okay, so that's how you do it in logic. Premise, there's an evil God that created evil. This conclusion was reached because it is presumed that everything is a substance of a material type. Everything is made of substance. Therefore, there are good substances and evil substances. Okay, that's what the Manichaeist thought. There is a struggle between the good substance and the evil substance in this world. In order to avoid having the evil substance win, the enlightened man must liberate the good substance from the bad substance. And what happened? The Manichaeist, they said, the good substance is in the fig tree, in the fruit, right? Because they couldn't find it. They don't know, where is that good substance? And then they started saying, it's in the fig tree, in the fig fruit. And therefore, the holy people, like the bishops of the Manichaeists, are supposed to eat that fruit and liberate the good substance into the world. Okay, Saint Augustine, the one who wrote this book and the one who made a theory on evil, said that's crazy, right? How could you reach that conclusion? So he stopped being a Manichaeist and started reading Christianity. Okay, atheism. What about atheism? What would they say about evil? Atheist says there's evil in the world, therefore God does not exist. Okay, they use the idea of evil to say that God does not exist. So how can there be a God if there is evil in the world? And that sounds very true, right? So the reasoning of the atheists, according to believers, God is good and only creates what's good. But it's also a fact that there's evil in the world. So where does that come from? The existence of evil contradicts the idea of a God that is all good. So there's a contradiction there. If there's evil in the world, then God should not be good. But if God is good, then there should be no evil in the world. We have to reject one of them. And the truth is, there's evil in the world. Our experience of evil in the world is more real than our experience of God, right? More real to us than our experience of God. So the atheists, what they do is they reject the side of God. Therefore, God does not exist. Is this reasoning valid? That's the question. Is that correct? It is not automatically certain that there is an evil God. When there is evil, God does not exist. Okay, that's wrong, that premise. If there is evil, then God should not exist because God only creates the good. The connection is wrong. God may exist and create all that is good, but there may be another principle that creates the evil. Now, the Manichaeist said it was another God, but that's impossible also. Okay, so what about the Abrahamic religions? Almost all of them agree that man's free will causes evil. Okay, that's the source of true evil. Catholicism is the one that clearly dares to analyze the existence of evil from the point of view of Hellenic philosophy. Using the philosophy of Aristotle, Catholicism tried to explain what evil is. Okay, Aristotle or Plato. Plato was the one used by Platonism was used by Augustine. Islam. Worthy of mention is the different approach of Islam towards the understanding of good and evil. After Al-Ghazali, the rational interpretation of the Al-Quran has been replaced with jurisprudence. Thus, it is possible to say that the determination of good and evil is based on what Allah has said, especially as it appears in the Quran. Okay, so because God said it, it's good. Okay, it's very simple and very straight to the point. From this point of view, the definition of evil would focus more on whether man has followed Allah's precepts as can be found in the Quran. Okay, so you will be good if you follow what is written there, but you will be bad if you don't follow what is written there. Now, the solution given by Saint Augustine, the existence of the immaterial. So you remember that he was saying, I thought that there were two substances, the good substance and the bad substance, because evil must be a substance. Okay, and if evil is a substance, then it has to be created by another thing, another mass, a substance. If the material exists, there would be no need for substantial evil. Okay, so an immaterial God. I turn to the nature of mind. What is that intellect? What is that mind? But the false notion which I had of spiritual things let me not see the truth. Okay, but I did not understand what a spiritual thing was. But there could not be two gods who are omnipotent and infinite. If there are two, then one or both of them would not be God. Why? One would have a perfection that the other would not have. I think we mentioned this before in another lesson. If you have God A and God B, um, now in order to distinguish between the two gods, God B must have something that God A does not have, right? And in order to distinguish God B from God A, then God A must have something that God B does not have. Therefore, what happens there? God A is lacking something, and God B is lacking something. So if God is lacking something, that's not God, right? So there could not be two gods, there could only be one. So one would have a perfection that the other would not have. Therefore, the one lacking perfection would not be God. So it is always there has to be one God. Now, that one God makes everything good. So where does evil come from? The solution given by Augustine and taken up by Thomas Aquinas is that the absence of good, evil is the absence of a good that should have been there. Okay? You try to think about that concept. Evil is the absence of a good that should have been there. So it's not evil is there, but something good that was supposed to be there disappeared. Okay? When something disappears, well, there's nothing that replaces it there. So there's nothing there. And that is called a privation. Evil as privation. At which, says St. Augustine in Confessions, at which I, in my ignorance, was much troubled, and departing from the truth, seemed to myself to be making towards it, because as yet I knew not that evil was nothing. Okay, so it says evil was nothing but a privation of the good. Now, how do you explain that in more illustrative terms? It's like this. We all agree that being blind is not good, right? So you can say it's a sort of evil. Technically, it's a physical evil. Yeah, so being blind is not good. Now, we have to ask ourselves, is blindness something like this? There was a person here, and you added blindness to him, and he became blind. Okay? There is a perfect person here, then you add blindness to him, and he became blind. Okay? It's just like cancer. Okay? It's a person here, and you add the cancer cells to him, and he gets sick of cancer. Something that you add, right? But actually, evil is like blindness is like this. A person is supposed to see, he's supposed to have sight, but it was taken away from that. It disappeared. Your sight disappeared. That's why you're blind. It's not that I gave you blindness, God gave you blindness. No. Your sight disappeared, therefore you are blind, right? In cancer, okay, so why, Father, what about the cancer? It's something that's added. Well, the cells in themselves are not bad. What happens is that what disappeared is health. So cancer was not added, it was health that was removed. That's why it's bad, right? Cancer is bad because it removes health, right? It disappears. So evil is always a privation. Something that has disappeared, that something good that has disappeared, it was supposed to be there, but it's gone. Okay. Now there are two types of evil, physical evil and moral evil. The truth is that physical evil is not really that evil, because a blind person, for example, is still a good person, could still be a very, very good person, right? So the evil that is in him, the physical evil that is in him, does not change him morally, does not really make him evil himself. It's just that he has an obstacle there. Well, I'm showing you, this is actually a little video about a boy who was sick, and he was talking about heaven. So it's quite interesting.
Occasions, Helen House, a hospice here in Oxford for sick and terminally ill children. On his last visit, he had recorded a television interview with Mother Frances Dominica, the founder of Helen House, in which he talked openly about his illness. fully aware that he was going to die.
I was on steroids for 5 years, for the first 5 years of my life. And, well, when I was 10 years old, they took me off them because I had a liver hemorrhage. And they found that was the cause of the problem.
And what's your illness called?
Fanconi's anemia. It's something to do, it's a very rare bone marrow disease.
Okay, well, our video is not good enough in order to continue, but you can try to find this video on YouTube, and you'll find out that this boy, even though he had a physical evil, was very good. He was very good. Now, the real evil is moral evil. Okay, it's the only true evil because it is a choice made by a human will. Okay, a bad choice made by a human will. And I strain to perceive, says St. Augustine of Hippo, what I now heard, that free will was the cause of our doing ill. Okay? Free will is the cause of our evil, our being bad, and thy just judgment of our suffering ill. I was most sure that no other than myself did will and nil. Okay? What does that mean? I was the one who chose, or I was the one who rejected will and nil. And I also all but saw that that was the cause of my sin. The bad choice that I made, that's the cause of my sin, the evil. So that's evil is a privation. Personal responsibility as a sign of the origin of evil in man's free will. We say that evil is a privation. So you might ask, so what is deprived there in a moral evil? Well, what is deprived there is the right direction, the right purpose. It was supposed to be done for this purpose, or it was supposed to be done in this way for this good purpose and aim. But this man chose another purpose, chose something more selfish, for example, and did not do what was good. So their moral evil is also a privation. Something has disappeared, and it is the good purpose of that action. Why do we have to ask pardon if we are not personally responsible, right? So there's responsibility, and therefore the cause of the evil is the will, the human will. Freedom of choice entails personal responsibility, and a free choice can cause evil. The existence of the devil proves that the cause of evil is a free will. Okay, so this is more for the Abrahamic religions. I think all of them accept the existence of this former angel that has become evil. And why did that happen? His choice, right? It's his choice that made him bad. So God did not create him evil, at least in the theology of the Abrahamic religions, but he chose not to go with the plans of God. So he looked for another direction. His direction, the good direction of his choice, was deprived. He deprived his choice of a good direction. Moral evil is a wayward direction of the will, as a disobedience to natural law. Okay, so disobedience to our own nature, to our own essence, rather than the material absence of a part. Okay, so a material absence of a part is a physical evil, but disobedience to natural law or a wayward direction of the will is a moral evil. The end. So I hope that you have learned something here, especially the very essence of what evil is, that can explain why there is evil in this world, even though there is a good God. So you can try to meditate on that and deepen your knowledge and understanding of it. And if you have any questions, well, go ahead and send them to the lecturer. Thank you and have a good day.